Hello, welcome everyone to this channel. My name is Janet. I'm working through the King James's Bible. Today I am in the Book of Kings, the first part, and I'm working through chapters 14 and 15. So make yourself comfortable and we'll begin. So before we start chapter 14, I just wanted to give a quick recap of yesterday's chapter, chapter 13, where we saw King Jeroboam basically creating lots of sin in his kingdom. He is worshipping false gods. He's leading the Israelite tribe down a very dark path. Priests are being made out of different tribes which are not the Levi tribe, so he's not following any of God's commandments or statutes. He's really going way against them. And a prophet was brought to him through God to speak to him to change his ways, but he hasn't listened. He's carried on making more sin, creating more problems, and so his house is now doomed, we found. So as we move into chapter 14, we learn that his son becomes sick, and his son's name is Abijah. So Jeroboam asks his wife to go in disguise to the town of Shiloh. Now there is located the prophet Ahijah. He was the man who spoke to Jeroboam many years ago to tell him that he would become king over Israel, 10 of the tribes, which has come true. So he's asking his wife now to go there to find out why his son is sick. Now God had already informed Ahijah that Jeroboam's wife was on her way, that she was in disguise. So when she does finally arrive, he knows who it is, and he knows exactly what to tell her. And these are the words that God has spoken through him. Now he explains to her that the reason their son is sick is because King Jeroboam has sinned against God's laws and statutes. He's worshipping false gods, he's creating priests out of tribes that do not belong in the priesthood, and so things are going to get bad for them. The first thing that's going to happen is the son is going to die as soon as she returns back to her land. Their son will die, and the Israelites will all grieve his loss because he was the only good thing left in Jeroboam's family. The rest are obviously sinning. God also says through the prophet that now Jeroboam's family are cursed, and so is all of Israel, and it's going to be a downward spiral basically. Jeroboam's household is going to suffer, and the Israelites will also suffer along with him. So Jeroboam's wife returns home, and as soon as she steps through that front door, her son dies. And so very quickly, the predictions that God has given through the prophet are starting to come true. Now meanwhile, we return to Rehoboam, who is the king of Judah and the Benjamin tribe. And we learn that he became king at age 41, and he reigned over the tribes, the two tribes that I've just mentioned, for 17 years. We also learn that his mother was an Ammonite, and her name was Naamah. Now, although we've heard the demise of the Jeroboam tribe and what's going on that side, we don't hear much better on the Judah side either. They are also sinning, they are worshipping false gods, and so two sides are just going against the Lord. So after 5 years of Rehoboam's reign, we learn that he ends up in war with the king of Egypt, who stole the treasures in God's temple and also the gold shields that Solomon had made. So they are stolen by the king of Egypt. So Rehoboam has these replaced by 2 bronze shields instead. Now with these two different sides sinning, they end up waging war against each other, and this goes on for a long time. This is like the days of their lives. It's a continual war between Jeroboam and Rehoboam. And as this chapter comes to an end, we learn that Rehoboam then dies. So his reign is over, and his son takes over this role. His name is Abijam. Now, as we move into chapter 15, we learn that Abijam is not a righteous man, just like his father. So, God still, regardless of this, because of King David, who was the one who was very loyal to God. Yes, he did mess up a couple of times, but he always reverted back to God's ways. Whereas the previous kings After him, Solomon and onwards, they have sinned. They've gone way, way against God. So for King David, God is actually seeing some good in these kings and he's kind of staying with them. So what God allows is for Abijam to have a son, and he also makes the city of Jerusalem strong. So the war still rages between these two opposing sides because they're sinning. They're not really following God's statutes, so they're going to keep going into this demise until something turns around. So we've got Jeroboam and Abijam now warring against each other, and unfortunately Abijam is killed, and it's his son that then takes over the reign, and his name is Asa. So Asa, he takes over in the 20th year of King Jeroboam, who rules the majority of the Israelite tribes. And Asa reigns for 41 years, and he is a righteous man in the eyes of God. He actually cleans up a lot of the mess that has been left over from his previous father and the father before that we've heard. You know, the previous kings, they've made such a mess with their sinning that he comes in and he cleans up a lot of things. And this is what he does. He removes the male prostitutes that were working in the shrine. He also got rid of all the false idols. They are eradicated. And he removed his grandmother from being the queen mother because she was making an Asherah pole, which is a goddess pole basically made out of wood. They make it out of a tree because it's representing the tree of life. That's how they believed it to be. And I just wanted to give you a picture of what that actually looks like. So there, that's the kind of thing that she was building. So he has that burned down, and her position as Queen Mother is taken down also. Asa also brings gold and silver into the temple for his loyalty to God. So you can see he's really starting to follow the true practices of God. Now we have a war going on between Asa and Baasha, who was the king over Israel. Now he built a fortress at Ramah, which was to block the main entrance into Judah, which is the area which King Asa ruled. So Asa has a plan. He decides to get all the gold from the Lord's temple and the silver, and also from his palace, and he gets his servants to take it to Ben-Hadad, who is the king of Syria, and he's in Damascus. And he asks him to break the treaty that he has with King Baasha of Israel. So obviously, with all this gold and silver represented to him, the king of Syria decides, okay, I'll break the treaty, and he then goes to war with Baasha. And during this war, the king of Syria takes over several of Baasha's cities, including Ramah. So he's able then to take down that fortress, which is what Asa's servants do. They remove it all, and so the path is now cleared in that area. And King Baasha, he then moves to the town of Tirzah. Now we learn that as Asa is aging, his feet become diseased, and he dies eventually. And his son Jehoshaphat then becomes king of Judah. So we've lost quite a lot of kings in the Judah tribe throughout these couple of chapters. Next we learn that Nabda, who is the son of Jeroboam, he then becomes king. But it's only for a short reign of 2 years, because he sins and he leads the Israelites into sin along with him. So we have the king Bathsheba of Israel. He conspires against Nabda, and he kills him, and he kills all of his family. Everyone in the Jeroboam household is killed. He then becomes king over all of the 10 tribes in Israel, and he has now ended the house of Jeroboam as God predicted. You know, that house was going to go down, and it literally has. So as we end this chapter, we've got King Baasha now over the main northern tribes, the 10 tribes, and we have King Jehoshaphat over the Judah and Benjamin tribes. So this is how we close chapter 15. And so we've had a lot of changes going on in terms of who has been king over these tribes. And in these 2 chapters, it states the book of Chronicles, which gives a lot more detail about the reign of King Asa and also King Nadab. So you can always refer to those if you want to go there now. But as I'm going through the entire Bible this year, we will get to that in due course. So this ends my review for today, and I'll be back again soon with more chapters within the Book of Kings. Thanks for being here. Take care. Bye.